make sure Tanya is present because she normally joins using my login. I have to promote her. Not here yet, but I'll keep an eye.
Go ahead and call this meeting to order. The Olympia Tree Board, Monday, July 8th, 2024. Yes, we'll do roll call. I'll go first. We'll just go around the table. From Grantham here.
Brett Chapman.
Mike Jackson.
And Alden.
Tim Seedorf.
Brody Cobalt.
And Tanya is absent, but she is supposed to be here, so. All right. Any changes to the agenda tonight?
For me.
Has everybody read through the meeting minutes?
Just one quick note on page 4.
Okay.
It contacted the DNR. And in that write-up, it says contracted. It's on page 4. Yeah. Otherwise, I didn't bring my.
Do you remember where it was? You can find it if.
Yeah, the third paragraph up from the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Sterling Award.
I have an update on that, which I'll.
It's page 4 of the minutes, which is page 6 of the packet.
Oh. Okay. All right. So we will change that. For third one from the top. Yep. Okay. Contacted. Okay. We'll make that note.
Equalizer, Mike.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm on
ordinarily you would, it says contracted. You pay attention.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, with that correction, page 4, paragraph 5, from contracted to contacted. We have a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second, yeah.
Mike, seconds, okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes from May 13th, 2024, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. Passed. Tree board member reports? Nothing today. Right. None to report. Okay, coordinators report.
I have a couple things, and then I'm going to pass it off to City Administrator Parks to share some.
Perfect.
So the River Network grant agreement goes to City Council on the 16th. The Urban Forester position funding was submitted by myself and Dan, my boss Dan, Director Dan Smith, through the budget process for review. I met with the Arbor Day Foundation last week, who is launching a program/service called Community Canopy Tree Distribution that will be really, really helpful for us for the tree distribution incentive that's wrapped up in the urban forestry grant as well. It's very helpful because it allows us to have a list of trees that we'll offer. Arbor Day works with nearby nurseries. There's a mail order option or a come to an event, which I think is what I'd prefer to opt to. So people would come to an event, learn about proper tree care and maintenance, and go home with their tree that they select, but they apply online and they have to learn about right tree, right place, and they select the right tree and drop it on a satellite image of their home, well, not on top of their home, but their property, so that they can kind of figure out where the tree would be placed, so that we would have some idea of what species is planted on what property at what location. We can insert some overhead line data if we can get that from PSC. We could get our own utility data and put that into the mapping tool too, to make sure that people aren't planting right on top of sewer mains, for instance, or utility boxes. So this would allow them to kind of almost outsource, for us to outsource that whole process. We would still be the ones leading the workshop on how to do the tree care and maintenance. That program, when it gets up and running with the new urban forester, would also have mulch, compost, watering, and a watering bag. So we would source those and give those out at the event as well. But the trees that people would pick would be already selected and chipped from or trucked using the Arbor Day Foundation's assistance. And it's actually like a third of the price of what I estimated the tree cost would be for the grant. So it's I think, a good program. Of course, I can have the Arbor Day Foundation come present to you all about this product, and we can talk with our city attorney about any procurement guidelines that we need to follow to make sure that we're doing whatever solicitation needs to happen. But that's a cool opportunity that I learned about recently that I think would be really helpful for us.
Is there a way to capture the species and location for the city's database?
Yes.
Assuming this is being planted on
Yes.
public property?
Yeah, these would be planted on private property, so this would be for people's homes. And we could have two different campaigns, so one that's focused on that area, the EPA, IRA disadvantaged area that the urban forester is going to be having to track their time with, and the grant would be funding that. And then we can have a citywide program too that would just kind of go through two different reporting structures that would be really helpful for grant management. And we could put in X number of dollars for trees outside of that area, and then all the grant money that we would have for the trees in that area, and we could get outputs of everything.
So, as part of the Right Tree, Right Place, we've had some discussions about the disproportionate number of Norway maples, for example.
Mhm.
Can we filter the
Species that are offered?
private,
Yes.
landowners' choices?
Yes. We can select, I think they normally offer between 6 and 8 different species for people's homes. The tree board and the urban forester, if hired, can be part of that process to determine those trees, and we'll have some that are shorter, some that are bigger, so on and so forth. But yeah, we have a lot of control over it, and it has a lot of benefits. But again, if we need to do a competitive solicitation because of the dollar amount, we will do what we need to do, but this looks promising. I was just really excited and wanted to share it with you all.
What size of tree would it be?
We can get up to 13 gallons. They generally do 5 gallon.
This doesn't conflict with local nurseries?
They use local nurseries. So the Arbor Day Foundation has their own contacts and networks of nurseries in the area. They go for Washington. They would go for like a Southwest Washington or an Oregon tree and haggle those prices for us.
And backing up, when would the council vote on the urban forestry position budget item?
16 each.
So the grant agreement is on the 16th. Of this month for the grant agreement. The rest of the funding for the position would be with the budget. So there will be 2 different votes that would say yes to the grant and yes to the rest of the funding that we need for the
But all
position.
on the 16th?
Yeah, because there's 2 parts of it.
Budget gets approved for the 2025, 2026 biennium at the end of November, beginning of. This is a ways off yet.
So the position couldn't be filled until after first year.
If all of the funding lines up as I hope, it would be hiring in the first quarter or so. Would be ambitious, but needed. And then I will, Sterling Award. So you had asked a number of months ago about the Sterling Award, and that isn't something that we specifically apply for. Apparently, we have to get a growth award for 10 years in a row to get a Sterling, to be a Sterling city.
And what qualifies for a growth award?
Above and beyond just the annual recertification of the Tree City USA, we have to show like significant progress each year, beyond just the bare minimum. I think that we've gotten a growth award in the past. I've just been trying to keep up with the Tree City, so I personally haven't been submitting for the growth award, but there is a sticker that I inherited, so I know we got it some year.
Is that something you apply for, or something that someone automatically gives you after reviewing your previous application?
You apply for it. So it's your normal, application for Tree City USA, which I report the total number of trees that we've removed, trimmed, away, planted, hours spent on trees, value of labor for that. There's a number of other metrics all related to trees, but really what we're getting at is the per capita expense that the city pays per year, for trees and per capita. So I think it needs to be over $3 or $4, and last year we were at $11. So,
But as our population grows, we have to significantly spend more.
well, we're more than triple the minimum requirement right now, so we'd probably be good for a while, especially when we have the urban forester in this grant. That'll also help us, keep a nice high per capita. Oh, yeah, hi.
Oh.
You couldn't get into Zoom?
Came in.
So I came in.
Yay. Well, that's good research. Maybe the urban forester can take that on along with 100 other things that we're dreaming of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Feel free to sit at the table if you want, Tanya, too. There's a seat over here.
So let me just clarify. We apply for a growth award?
Yes. In addition to our normal every year
We
recertification.
didn't know we could or should do that.
I knew that it was an option. I have limited capacity, so I've just been making sure that I'm keeping up with the minimum. If I was instructed by the tree board or my supervisor to go after the growth award, I would have done it, but I was just trying to keep up our
We didn't know.
consecutive years. And now I can pass it off to City Administrator Parks.
Thank you. So I'm here tonight. Both the mayor and I are wanting to meet with most of the boards and commissions for the city of Tumwater over the course of the next several months. In the fall, we're wanting to have a discussion with the council to make sure that they have expressed an interest, for example, in potentially providing a stipend. So the mayor and I wanted to come and talk to you, all of the boards and commissions over the course of the summer to kind of get a feel for how well you feel like you're being resourced. Do you have enough staff time and resources? How you feel about a stipend? Do you think a stipend would be something that would appeal to people? I don't know if you've had difficulty finding board members in the past. Sometimes a stipend can potentially address that if people have childcare needs or something in the evening. And then the reason I wanted to start with you all is because I also wanted to offer to answer any questions that you have about the process that we've been going through with the Davis Meeker Gary Oak Tree. There's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of inaccurate information out there, and I wanted to make sure that I presented myself and gave you an opportunity to ask whatever questions you have of me. And the mayor was intending to be here tonight, I think, but we didn't get it on her calendar, so she doesn't typically come in on Mondays, so I didn't have an opportunity to connect with her today. So, and I always want to make sure that I take an opportunity to thank boards and commissions that are volunteers for your service to the community. You volunteer your time and expertise and to a good cause, I believe. And so sometimes that goes unthanked and unappreciated, and I just wanted to reassure you all that that's not the case at the City of Tumwater. We're very appreciative of the time and energy and the expertise that you bring to the table. So first topic, how do you feel in terms of, as a board and a commission, are you, do you have enough of Alyssa's time? Do you wish you had more resources?
I think our previous discussion highlights there could always be more time and resources for achieving our urban forestry plan objectives.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we haven't, this hasn't made good progress, but there's always more to be done.
True. Anybody else have thoughts?
Speak freely. I won't be offended.
Well, I would second Brent's thing. It seems that things are getting more complex, more time-consuming, and if we don't put more time into it, we will not even maintain status quo. So if we want to improve, it's going to require more time. least if we want to maintain, it's gonna require more time.
I mean, the thing that'll really help the change is the urban forester. I mean, we've been talking about that for almost 20 years. And, it's just good to see that it's, should finally come, you know, hopefully.
Yes. The fact that it's, got a substantial source of revenue is a good thing. There are a lot of, the city of Tumwater has been growing a lot over the last several years, pretty rapidly, and, we're gonna have lots of staffing requests in this next budget. The fact that the urban forester, has a grant, component of grant support is really very helpful and very beneficial. What's the percentage?
50%.
Yeah. And I would say that, the council, in terms of understanding their values and beliefs, environmental sustainability, the fact that we've funded a sustainability coordinator moving in that direction, I think that demonstrates that they have a commitment to the environmental stewardship, programs that have been, instituted and implemented. And so I'm hopeful, that we'll be able to get that position.
Yeah, it seems like the city's been understaffed. Kind of free up some other people's time.
Yeah.
One of the things that's unique, I think, about revegetation issues is the scale and the time span. You know, we're talking about 400 years. Decisions we make today will may affect a plant that will be put in the ground and grow for hundreds of years. Or the counter effect, if we remove a plant that's been there 400 years, that has an effect. So the way I see houses being put up and taken down, or put up so quickly, that has a long-term effect. I really can't put my head around what this community is going to look like 400 years from now. But the fact that the natural environment has been here so long and is, of course, required to undergird and sustain the environment in which we're also dependent, makes this work a very high priority.
Absolutely. I think that, one of the challenges with, planning for growth and development is we have one regulatory environment over here that says you are obligated, City of Tumwater, to do these things in order to ensure that we're not sprawling into rural areas. So we're able to better, maintain and retain critical areas, critical habitat, natural resource lands outside of urban growth areas, and to then concentrate growth and development inside those urban areas. That's one challenge. That's what the Planning Commission works on. They work on how to comply with that regulatory environment and that regulatory scheme in terms of how your community grows and develops over time. Obviously, a challenge of concentrating development is how do you do that in a way that maintains and retains the natural environment as well. And so that's, I think, where the city benefits from having a tree board and having a group such as yourself that provides advice about how to address those different, often competing interests that have to be balanced. Local governments do balancing acts every single day, depending on, and in every single topic, in terms of having adequate resources to do the work that we're obligated to do and mandated to do by whether it's the state government or the federal government. Balancing is an important thing that happens at a local government all the time. And so having people such as yourself willing to volunteer your time to help the city navigate that balance. How do we assess and evaluate the best path forward in terms of the balancing act that we have to do on a regular basis is very helpful. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts?
Well, we really don't have a voice, the tree board. I mean, as in the Gary Oak, we were told that it didn't matter what we thought. We didn't have a say in what happened. It went to the historic committee, and the historic committee chose not to delist it, and then it was overrode, and here we are in the situation we're in. So I think being on the tree board, I joined because I wanted to make a difference, and I've stuck with it because of all the dedicated people here. But there's a lot of times where I feel like we don't really make a difference. We talk about, I live by Black Lake High School. I've seen that developer, we actually went on a field trip a year ago, and we saw the trees that he had taken down, whoever it is, I can't remember his name, and how all the old growth trees and how that whole middle part's gonna be a wetland now because he took so many out. Now it's just a big swamp. Now he's taking out more trees and he's putting more homes up. And he's doing so because the 3-year rule that the city has put in has allowed him to do that. So he's not only taken away all the trees in the middle, now the old growth trees on the outside, he's taken 2 from each acre. And that's okay because he's waited so long to fill this time frame that the city has put in. So I appreciate that we're working on the TMC codes, but hopefully we will make a difference so that we don't have to start from scratch, so to speak. The developments that Alyssa shared, one of them, there's 561 trees listed. He's saving 32. Garber's is saving 32. I'm like, wow, can't we do better than that? I understand that they plant trees, but you can go out to Black Lake High School and look at the trees that they've planted. They're awful, and most of them are dying. So I want to encourage the city to, I don't want to say give us more power, but give us a voice in how our community is being developed, because there's a lot of people. I think with the Gary Oak, it really opened my eyes that there's so many people that really, really care, and they don't have time to volunteer. Their young parents or their older folks, and they can't get around like we do, but they really care. And they tell me stories that, for instance, the apartments going up by Home Depot, a mother told me that she was heartbroken that they're 5 stories high, and now they can't see the high school tumwater. I thought, I don't have children. That never occurred to me. But it's for a lot of people, it's like Jim said, it's heartbreaking. And they feel like everything is just happening so fast around them and there's no transparency, and I want us to help with that. I don't know how, but I want us to help with that.
Yeah. I understand the confusion and the frustration.
That's what you do for a living. You deal with every day, yes.
Yes. There are processes and codes. There are competing interests. And the city's job is to ensure that we're doing the best we can with all of those competing interests. I can't answer the specific questions about the development that you're talking
Right,
about.
I understand.
I don't know the codes well enough. If the codes are not accomplishing the balance that we referred to, then there's an opportunity to reevaluate the codes, and I believe that's actually happening.
And one of the challenges with the codes is it seems like the people reviewing the development applications provide a lot of variances or exemptions to the code. So it doesn't really matter how good the codes are if there's one variance or exemption after another. And the city does have control over that.
So I think if you would, okay,
Or maybe we need data, maybe the perception is not matching the data.
I would ask you to keep that perspective in place until you've had an opportunity to talk to some of the folks who are implementing the code. Regulatory tools,
But who would that be?
that would be probably the current planners.
And how can we get that opportunity?
That's something that we can talk to them about. But when a code is, variances have a very specific regulatory context in the land use planning environment. You have to, there are strict guidelines that are written into the code And if you can't meet whatever those minimum components are, you don't just get a willy-nilly variance exemption. There has to be something, however the code is written, and I don't know how the codes are specifically written, in the case of the development, but the variances and exemptions are not, indiscriminately given. I can guarantee you that. It's a land use, land use regulations and permits are governed by what are called quasi-judicial or administrative processes. They're governed by the code. The city staff is required, legally required, to implement the codes as they are written, whether that means granting a variance or an exemption when that request meets those requirements, or if it means not granting that variance if somebody doesn't meet those requirements. You're going to see that case less frequently because if somebody isn't getting their variance, they aren't moving forward with their request. So does that make sense? So you're going to see the instances where exemptions or variances are issued because they're issued. Whereas if they're not, they're denied, you don't see the results of that. Does that make sense?
I think we would welcome the opportunity to learn more about that, and I know we're doing a case study tonight, but I think that could be just the beginning of being more informed. So that
Yeah.
when we're asked for direction on codes, we can do the best job possible.
Have you ever met with the planning commission?
Yeah.
They have
Jointly?
Joint meeting.
But not about this topic.
I wrote to Alex, I think Alex is on this.
Alex is the planner, right?
Yes.
He's the current planner.
He reviews most of the tree-related landscaping applications, and whenever you all have questions about developments or planning or whatnot, I generally, if it's not a long-term plan, I go to Alex, and he's very happy to help. I don't want to speak for him and volunteer his time, but I would be surprised if he wasn't willing to come to you all one evening to talk to you about this process. He would be able to speak to our agenda number, item number 9 a lot better than I, because he's the one who's administering it. I asked him some questions that I anticipated you all might ask so that I can have some answers for you, but that's not my background. But he also welcomes the opportunity for an urban forester to have subject matter expertise to look at these applications with more understanding. He nor I have forestry or arborist backgrounds, so.
And I think that's why the code itself talks about having to have, the code defines what qualified, I can't remember the terms, but there are terms that are specifically defined by the codes and the ordinances. And so, where we don't have that subject matter expertise in-house, we are obligated to contract that so that there's a qualified person that's actually making decisions on behalf of the city in terms of the recommendations that they're making. With regard to the Gary Oak tree, that is a situation that was unclear from the very beginning what the situation was, what the regulations were that governed what happened with that tree. I didn't understand that there was even a report done until the report was issued in October of last year. And so late last year, as we were trying to figure out, is it a heritage tree, is it not? Some people on staff, Alyssa can verify, were arguing that it wasn't. And then she was very strongly arguing that it was. So is it a heritage tree or is it not? Is it on the historic register, the Register of Historic Places? Is it not? How do you manage a living thing on a register that is typically oriented around non-living buildings and structures? And so there was a lot of confusion around what was going on with the tree. So it was time to take a pause and ensure that everybody understood exactly what the path forward was. The path forward became an issue of public safety, and the arborist report that indicated that it had a high level of risk of failure, and that if that high level of risk did occur in the future, that the probability that it would hit a target and cause significant damage was also high, which is a composite rating of a high risk. And based on that, we did have conversations with WCIA, our insurance authority, They did verbally recommend that we remove the tree after evaluating the report that was provided to them. And that's the course of action that we took. There is a provision in the heritage tree section of the code that exempts a tree from exempts a landowner, in this case the city, from having to get a tree removal permit in the instance of a tree that's been verified to have a high risk. And so that is the path that was taken. Yes.
So I know several people have suggested that a traffic study be done with the feasibility of rerouting the road, and whether that's feasible or not, you don't know until you do a study, but was that study ever done?
So,
And if not, why can't that be done before a decision remove a tree such of that stature? It seems like that's a really legitimate step to help inform a final decision.
I will answer that question, but I first want to clarify, the decision to take the tree down did not have anything to do with Old Highway 99. It did not.
Yeah, that's
okay.
my question.
Okay, Old Highway 99 there was a plan that was, and an evaluation was done. I think SCJ Alliance actually did that project. And it was adopted last July or August by the council. And it actually talks about expanding the road to a 4-lane profile, all on the east side of the roadway, so on the side of the road away from the tree. That plan is adopted and is moving forward. The plan for the corridor improvements along the frontage at the tree are not planned for the next 5 to 10 years, I believe it is, in the context of that. Could the road be fully moved outside the drip line? Yes, at a cost. And so that's something that we're doing now that the mayor has agreed to get a second level 3 tree risk assessment. We will know what the cost of moving the road fully outside the drip line is.
It seems odd that information wasn't included in the decision-making process. Like, oh, this is going to cost $50 million to move the road, and that's very informative for the decision maker. But to make a decision in a vacuum seems really negligent to me.
I can appreciate your perspective. If you're faced with the decision that the mayor was faced with, with the recommendations that she was getting from the tree professional, the city attorney, and the risk management and the insurance authority, you would be likely in a different position. You may have a different perspective.
Does the FAA have anything to do with that tree?
Absolutely not.
So it is on the right of way.
It is on the right-of-way. It is outside the runway protection zone. It doesn't matter if that tree is there or is not there. It doesn't affect the current plans that the Port of Olympia has in place.
I'm confused how the city didn't know that it was a heritage tree, or how old it was, or if it was a historic tree when it was listed on the Tumwater website forever.
I can speak to the heritage tree aspect, if I may.
Sure.
Many of the heritage trees that we have in our heritage tree program were established before the section of code authorizing heritage trees was developed. It's also many of the heritage trees that are on our register right now are also older than document retention requirements. So we don't have, when a heritage tree is designated by the city council, even still, we don't, and this is something that I would like to see improved in our code work for 16.08, that we issue a resolution saying that it's a heritage tree, because right now the only thing that gives a tangible representation that the tree is a heritage tree is the meeting minutes of city council, which can be destroyed after 20 years, which is why trees that have been heritage trees for this long don't have any actual records showing that they are such. When I first started, I inherited our map of heritage trees, and you all might remember that there were a number of landmark trees and other trees that had no authorization in our code whatsoever that were intermingled in there. And I even embarrassingly wrote a newsletter article trying to do the Urban Forestry Management Plan action about newsletter articles saying that we had 25 heritage trees, but then learned we did not have 25 heritage trees. Landmark trees were just cool trees that didn't go through any process, that were slapped on a map at some point. And then we had the heritage trees. The only heritage trees, other than the ones that we have the meeting minutes for, that have been designated within the past 15 years, which there's only a handful. There's the DOT trees have a certificate that was issued that I think DOT requested, and I have copies of that, but there's no other like tangible proof that any of these other trees. I assert that they are because I looked through whatever old archival data that I could find when I was trying to flesh out between the landmark trees and the heritage trees, and then there was a historic tree thing that I inherited in terms of GIS, and I think I figured it out. So I feel confident because I've done the sleuthing, but they're more the Davis, Gary Davis, Gary Oak. There isn't any documentation that it's a heritage tree, but I still assert that it is. It's odd and confusing,
Well,
and
the tribes have it documented.
And there's a
as
plaque on it.
As a heritage tree.
I think the historic, it has the plaque for the
It says
historic.
dedicated to City of Tumwater 19-something Arbor Day event. And with all the publicity that the gentleman aroused with the city for getting that tree saved, I would think everybody would know about it.
Well, similar, the Gary Oak on Little Rock, that also had a lot of public support to make sure that the road didn't hurt the tree. That one wasn't a heritage tree until Jim nominated it less than 2 years ago. And that one also had a notable resident who put in a lot of effort and a community effort to make sure that that tree was preserved, retained. I mean, when we did when you nominated it, and then I had Kevin go out and do the assessment to verify all of the age, size, the health, and whatever, that's when he found out that it had some fungal issues and needed trimming, and it was because it was nominated that we caught on to that and then did the necessary maintenance work to keep it healthy and happy. But that one was also one that had a lot of community support and protection and rallying, and that one wasn't a heritage tree until.
And the tree board had a role in that as well at the time.
Yes, I'm sure.
Rerouting the road.
Yeah.
So there's a precedence for rerouting roads.
But it sounds like, maybe, you know, the growth in documentation and legalese and all of this sort of stuff is evolving. And didn't exist maybe when the tree board started, least of all before that, when, people said, yeah, you know, this is a special plant, whatever. So, you know, the community says, yeah, we want to make this special, but there's nothing legalese that says, yes, this is now an official preserved or whatever designated plant.
I'd like to suggest a resolution when we designate heritage trees in the future.
So that should be part of the, as we review the,
16.08 in that section of the heritage.
clarify that.
Yeah.
And I think, and I appreciate that, and I think that is the reality of 153 old cities, that we didn't always have great documentation. We didn't always have good supportive ordinances and codes to support what we did in the past. I think reviewing and updating those codes is really important. I feel like one of the things that can't be discounted, however, is that there are instances where trees can pose a hazard to public safety. We take trees down in our parks regularly on an annual basis because they present a hazard to people who are enjoying the park. That may not be the highest priority for some people. It is a legitimate issue that the city needs to manage in terms of risk management. And that's why the heritage tree ordinance, that's why the other component, the heritage tree section, the other components of the tree preservation code acknowledge that trees need to be removed at some point. Sometimes they need to be removed as a hazard tree.
I think we all understand that. I think it's just, as you said, look at the alternatives. There's other alternatives. I mean, I sent in to Leetta, the city council, everyone in the city council, a wildlife bridge. The one over I-90, Mercer Islands has a ton of them. There's other alternatives that it's going to cost a lot of money to remove that tree. why can't the city use that money to try to preserve it and do something to help preserve it is,
So,
I don't know. And can I just say something real quick? The processes that you were talking about that are in place, I agree, they are great that they are in place, but that it was not delisted by the historic committee. And then they asked for a second harvest report, and then it didn't happen. And then it just took a life of its own a different way. And I think that's why people feel slighted by it. And as a tree board member, I was shocked. I had no idea that it even happened. A friend of mine told me that the tree was gonna be cut down. I had no idea. And we had just met on Monday. And it happened on Wednesday that that the decision was made. I listened to the historic committee and I was like, "Whew, that's awesome. They're gonna do another harvest report. That's great." Then all of a sudden, it's like we got blindsided with, "Oh, by the way, none of that's gonna happen. This is what's gonna happen." And it doesn't, you guys weren't told. Hey, I got sent an Olympian article. So the processes that are in place are great if the city follows them, and listens to the committees and the people that volunteer their time and the experts that are on there.
I can spend several hours explaining all of the different things that happened, beginning in October, when I first understood what was going on. Nothing that's been done has been inconsistent with or in violation of any of the city's codes or regulations. The whole reason the initial request was made to the Historic Preservation Commission was because there was an application filed at the time that we thought we needed to file to remove the tree because of the hazard that it presented. This started because the tree presented a hazard in terms of the report that we were given from the tree professional. I believe you've had conversations at this committee back on March 11th. We were having a council work session on the very same night. Both of those included conversations about the tree and the problems that it was presenting and the path forward. And yes, it was a confusing path forward with the delisting issue. Delisting from the Historic Preservation Code did not and could not prevent it from going through a process as a hazard tree to be removed for public safety purposes.
I mean, it's a tough situation to be in, and I feel for the mayor because it's like, if you don't do anything, something bad. There's that, and if you do something, people are gonna be disappointed. I mean, you just can't, you can't win.
It's a horrible situation. And the way the mayor has been treated has been has made the decision that much more difficult and that much worse. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. It's not been an easy decision. It was not in complete disregard of everybody's inputs. It was, the decision that she made was made out of a true and legitimate concern for the safety of people who could be hurt if the high probability of another branch coming down were to happen. And that's where she made her decision. And yes, it's very uncomfortable. It's very sad. It's disappointing. There were alternatives evaluated in the report. Kevin looked at alternatives for mitigating or taking care of or trying to reduce the risk associated by the tree. Whether or not he did a good enough job explaining his evaluation of those alternatives, that is up for debate. But he did evaluate potential alternatives around cabling, retrenchment, all of those available activities, right? His recommendation remained that the tree should be removed based on the input from the other two arborists that he hired to help him with, and his evaluation and consideration of all of that material. He was asked in March at the work session with the council, if you were to do this retrenchment pruning, would it reduce the risk? Would it make the risk go from high risk to a moderate risk? And his answer was no. So those alternatives have been evaluated. Moving the road is millions of dollars. Taking the tree down is not millions of dollars. So there is a cost benefit, and I know nobody here wants to hear that. I don't like saying it, but the reality is the city has a finite set of resources and an obligation to protect the public, and is constantly balancing the varying needs and perspectives of everybody at the table.
And in terms of pressure or risk, you can eliminate the risk by cutting down the tree tomorrow versus moving the road a year from now. And the risk will continue until the road is moved.
Correct.
So, you know, there's a challenge there to say, I mean, so, you know, you decide, okay, we're gonna move the road, but next week, tree falls over and kills a mom with 2 kids in the backseat. You know, was it worth the risk? Was it worth the wait? Was it, you know, how do you justify that? And how does the family who says, you knew this was a risk and my wife and kids are dead now, what's their response going to be?
They're gonna sue the city, and because the city knew that the report existed and recommended the tree to be removed, the insurance authority will not cover that claim, and so the city of Tumwater coffers will pay for that lawsuit. That's what will happen. And that's not a scare tactic, that is reality.
Yeah.
How, right, how likely? I don't know. What was it like on May 16th last year? I actually looked at the weather. Top speeds were 10 miles per hour. It didn't come down in a terrible rainstorm. It came down on a day like today. Maybe not quite so hot.
Really came down on the side of the tree.
So the picture that depicts the tree branch moved, it had been moved out. That picture.
I didn't see a picture. I talked to the city worker. who
Okay,
actually turned it in.
So Mark Levac is the Transportation Operations Director. His words are the words that I utilized in my report.
Talked to the city worker who took a picture of it, who actually showed me exactly where the branch was, and joked about my car being parked under the tree, that it may fall on me. The reality is, we have trees all over Washington State, and they could fall. We're spinning our wheels here. It's the same thing we've all heard. We've read the report. I read the report from the arborist. I asked Alyssa when she first shared it. It was interesting that he said the tree is mostly healthy on one page, and you turn on the next page and he says, recommend removal. I didn't understand that. I still don't understand that. And we're just spinning our wheels, I think, so.
Well, the good news is we're gonna have a second report done, and the hope is that nothing happens between now and then.
Yeah. When will that be done?
So we submitted the request for qualifications. We're not required to do that because it didn't elevate to the level of needing to do that for competitive bid purposes. We sent that out immediately after the council meeting last week, so Wednesday last week. We asked everybody to submit their proposals by, I believe it was the 18th of July. We'll select some firms to interview and hopefully have a contract in place by July 31st so that they can begin the assessment right away. The qualifications that we chose were based on conversations with urban foresters from the city of Olympia, as well as from the Seattle Department of Transportation, their urban forestry program managers. So we're asking that they be an ISA board certified master arborist, as well as an American Society of Consulting Arborists registered consulting arborist, the additional certification, lots of acronyms. And we were able to get a list of those people, the 55 people that we sent it to are the 55 people within 250 miles of the city of Tumwater's zip code that are on that registered consulting arborist list. Some of whom are actually not certified, board certified master arborists, so they won't submit, but we will hopefully get that done sooner than later. Any other questions?
I don't have any.
I'm curious a little bit, the tree board is an advisory board to the council. What do you see as our role in issues like this? It'd be nice to say, we don't have any responsibility. Of course, as advisory groups, we don't. Are we only to speak when the council asks us for advice?
The tree board, the historic preservation, the planning commission, all of you have a stated purpose, and you have a set of bylaws, and you have a set of tasks that are handed down to you generally. I believe the tree board's primary role is to review and advise the city on things related to
Trees.
right? Which is largely codes, inventories, the urban forestry management plan, and everything that you do as a subject matter expert is then recommended either to the planning commission, who then recommends to the council, or directly to the council. So it's an advisory board on policy level, program level issues. If you have an opinion about something, you are more than welcome to express your opinion about whatever it is that you would like to, including something that you're talking about as a tree board. Generally speaking, if the tree board is taking an action and reviewing and considering something, you're voting on it. And that's the recommendation that goes to the council. If an individual doesn't agree with that, it's up to your bylaws and your rules of procedure to decide whether or not you issue minority reports or not. I don't know if you have those provisions.
I don't think that the tree board bylaws have the code authorizing the board, but I'm unaware of any bylaws. Perhaps since the board is almost as old as I am, there might be some that have been lost to time from document destruction, but that's something that I've been talking with Dan about recently, that the board actually does bylaws to the best of my knowledge.
But if we're citizens of the city of Tumwater,
Absolutely.
we have the responsibility to speak up on any issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would advocate to you that to the degree that you are a subject matter expert working on things that the city council has asked you to work on, you also become ambassadors and communicators out to the community that that's happening. We have a robust urban forestry management program. We have tree protection codes that have been in place for a lot of years. That is not necessarily something that is well understood. There's a bunch of people that want us to adopt the Bellingham Code. It's like their legacy tree code. We have a heritage tree code. They didn't have a tree code. They just adopted one. So we can do a better job, I think, at the city of advocating for what it is that we are doing in a positive fashion around managing our trees and trying to preserve trees and vegetation as much as possible as we balance the need for providing affordable housing, accommodating an allocated number of population growth, accommodating an allocated number of new housing units that we as a community in Thurston County and in the state of Washington are obligated to provide. We could definitely do a better job talking about.
It's very complex, and I don't think this board is very knowledgeable about that, I would say.
The regulatory piece?
Yeah, and all the balancing the city's required to do.
I think that's why there's a role for people such as yourself who are subject matter expert and who are passionate and knowledgeable about a topic, is to provide that information and just recognize that there is a balance that has to be played. Accomplished.
We've sometimes sort of discussed that in one sense, this advisory group speaks for the environment. We don't speak for growth. We don't speak for traffic control, or in some ways we do, but our subject matter is the environment.
Mhm.
So, that's what we should, if anyone in the city has a focused responsibility for that advocacy, it's us.
Yes. And I think that's important. It's important to have the advocacy. And I would just ask that it's also important to understand that that advocacy and that knowledge and that expertise
Has to be done.
has to be balanced with the other obligations that we have.
Well, maybe I can transition to a case study, and I don't know if you're gonna report out on the roundabout that the tree board brought up, but there's a really small but specific example where the city has planning on concreting a roundabout as opposed to doing some kind of even just a low monotypic, vegetation. So, we're trying to have a voice and trying to have some positive influence. I think we're still in the process of sorting that out, but
I do have a response.
yay.
Um,
But it's my point, to be honest, not to you personally.
It was-
To the city process.
It was an awkward, thing to figure out, because it was a motion not related to code that was suggesting that we take, that we ask that privately developed, roundabouts be landscaped, which is not currently a requirement that we have. So I reached out to our transportation and engineering, department and director, and, they said that it's a suggestion until it's code, that we should incorporate it when we get to start work back on the landscaping code, which I think was your suggestion all along. That's the route that it goes, instead of, necessarily going directly to city council, telling them we want these to be, landscaped, that when the landscaping code comes back to us, that the tree board ensures that that language is in the proposal that you bring forward, that will then go to the planning commission and then go to city council. That's the appropriate place for it, and that, until it's something that we would like to do, but short there being a regulation or code saying that we have to, it's already hard enough for us to get these private developers to put in roundabouts. Versus a four-way stop, it was a win for us to begin with, that, if code, by all means, we'll ask them to landscape it, but short of code, we're happy that we got a roundabout.
I think, but that's just an example where we're trying to advocate, realizing there's a process, and we'll follow the process. Process takes time, and you don't know the end result.
Mhm.
But, we're trying to be more proactive about making a difference, through the mechanisms that are available to us.
Yeah. I appreciate that, and that, I think that's a great avenue for that advocacy.
But there's so many things that I'm just so uninformed or unknowledgeable about that I'm not even sure what to advocate for or what to bring up.
Right, you just noticed it, because ever since
I
you
just
brought it up
noticed it.
now, I noticed it.
Yeah, but how many other things that we could be
Yeah, yeah.
advocating for as a
Yeah.
board that we're not even aware of? I think we just need to move more education on the
Yeah.
process.
I think, joint meetings with the planning commission in particular, probably with the parks commission, in terms of where they plant trees. I don't know if you ever meet with them either. That might be a good thing. I'm an advocate for that type of collaboration. And I think that if you need additional explanation or research on Growth Management Act, what are we obligated?
Right.
What are we obligated to do inside the Tumwater Urban Growth Area? We're
What are
obligated
the goals for
a lot.
affordable housing?
It is, and so I started in land use environmental planning, and I started when the Growth Management Act was first passed, so that's a long, long time ago. It used to be that we could decide at the local level. One of the good things about the Growth Management Act, it was grassroots, it was local government up. It has changed to the point where we now are being told, as a component of population projections that are handed down from the state to the Thurston Regional Planning Council, they're now telling the city of Tumwater, in the next 20 years, you need to plan for X number of new housing units. And the number is something like 6,900 new housing units by 2030, 2040 something, inside our urban growth area. And we're not expanding that urban growth area, we have to stay within it. And that's because of laws that have been passed, that's an obligation. That's not we'd like you to, that's an obligation. City of Tumwater, figure out where you're gonna put all of these housing units and these allocated people, these new people that are gonna move to your area. You must find a way to accommodate those people inside your urban growth area.
Same time, the city doesn't have control on when that construction will occur,
Correct?
or when those properties will be sold, or to whom.
Exactly,
And so you're being told you have to do this, but you don't have control
exactly. You have
So make it
control,
happen.
you have control
as to
through
where
the,
it happens.
you have control through the regulations that you adopt and develop. And so the tree preservation ordinance, all of those ordinances and codes that you're gonna be looking at, if you haven't already started back up, all of those govern and regulate private development. And that's how the city maintains a control. We can't, unless we go out and buy something and build it, which we don't have the money to do that. You're absolutely right. We don't control those things through timing and construction. We control them through the ordinances and codes that are written and adopted by the city council. And this concept of, nice to have versus code, we do not have authority to regulate something unless it is in code. And we are required by law, again, a different law, to go through a process before we adopt development regulations. Because we have to have input from all perspectives, including developers. Developers are allowed to have a perspective. And so all of those processes take time. They're really frustrating for people who have a passion for something, and so I appreciate your patience, but recognize that the city has a certain way in which we can manage and control growth and development, and we have a certain amount of obligation requirements for managing growth and development. And we have all of those competing interests. We're trying to do the best we can, and your service to the city in terms of bringing your subject matter expertise to the table is very much appreciated.
They've been very generous. I have a more specific question that is on a lot of people's minds in Tumwater, speaking of urban growth. And can you update us on what the latest is with the gopher habitat?
Oh, the gopher, I thought maybe it was the brewery. That's the other question that we
Yeah.
So
So that's all about providing for urban growth, but also meeting other regulations.
What's
You have
that?
great news to share on that front?
Yes. So under the Endangered Species Act, there is what is called an incidental take permit. It's a permit that's issued where you're going to do a development, and that permit allows you to impact habitat as long as you're mitigating for it.
Wetland mitigation, right?
Yes, critical areas, yes. In this case, it's actually governed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's a federal statute governed by the federal agency. As a component, so the city of Tumwater and Port of Olympia applied for an incidental take permit to allow for development to occur inside the urban growth area so that we could develop a habitat conservation plan. That's a component of, you have to have that before you can get the permit. But that allowed, doing it comprehensively for inside the urban growth area allows for a much better habitat mitigation plan moving forward, as opposed to piecemealing that for individual projects. And it's also more beneficial for Fish and Wildlife Service, and it's also more beneficial for the general public to be able to know what it is that they need to do for mitigation in advance of going through their development permit process. So we had a meeting, we got a letter late last August, or it was an email following a meeting from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It threw us for a loop in terms of the technical details of what we had been working on for the past several years up to that point. It placed what we believe to be additional requirements on the habitat conservation plan that we had been working on that was not necessarily based on science associated with identifying actual gophers and gopher habitat. So since that time, we've been doing additional research with our subconsultants, looking at additional biological studies and doing additional economic studies and doing additional analysis of what the regulatory requirements are that U.S. Fish is allowed to impose under the Endangered Species Act. We've gotten to that point. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I think we actually have another meeting with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service tomorrow, and we're back talking to them and talking through this additional information and research that we've been doing since last August. That is very hopeful. It's hopeful in terms of they're reviewing the science that we've given them, the additional data and information that we've given them. We're talking further about strategies. We, the city of Tumwater, are moving forward with purchasing 300 acres for habitat mitigation.
Farm next to Black Hills High School.
Yes.
Is that the entire farm or just a?
We are attempting to purchase the entirety of the parcel. And they were very pleased with that. We actually we advocated to the state legislature. We got an appropriation from the state of $2 million. We've gotten a commitment from the Port of Olympia for $2 million. We've talked to Thurston County. They have their HCP, but they don't have specifically a Olympia pocket gopher habitat to be able to begin issuing their permits and allowing development to occur that impacts Olympia pocket gopher habitat and so they're interested in participating. And we also have some interest on the part of the Thurston County Conservation District in terms of managing the property. If we are successful in purchasing it, they're interested in having a new home that's their home, that is actually in a place that is where they are managing habitat so that they can do educational
That'd be cool.
kinds of things. So we are working that angle very thoroughly and trying to get to the point where we essentially feel like in order for us to have the HCP approved and the incidental take permit issued from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we need to have that Dolman property under ownership.
Wow, it's very educational. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate all of your time.
Thank you for your time.
I appreciate all of your perspectives. And I'm happy to talk to any of you if you would like at any point in the future. So please feel free to get a hold of me.
All right, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
I had one additional coordinator report to share that I realized throughout, and Hannah, I don't know if you would prefer to share this or if you would like me to. All right. Hannah emailed me today that she has a new life opportunity that's going to take her away from this area, and her last tree board meeting will be the August meeting.
Are you going to build your farm?
Out on the East Coast.
Excellent.
What do you want to grow? You have to do this, sir.
Well, first I would like some chickens and ducks. Ducks have no sharp parts.
But they leave.
Oh, yes. We have, so this is my boss. I don't think he would like to speak, but I can,
You better find out.
if you're okay, Chair, with moving to the public comment section of me.
Oh, sure, go for it.
To see if
Yep.
anyone would like to speak. Pamela, if you would like to provide public comment, you are now allowed to speak, if you'd like.
Actually,
unmute
no. Hi there. Actually, no, I just attended. So thank you for offering.
Okay.
Well, actually, yes, because of what City Administrator Lisa Parks said about the pocket gopher, because that's been an ongoing subject of conservation for a long time. And I was wondering if the property near, I know she left, but my question is the property near Black Hills High School being offered for sale, or is the money being gathered so that it's possibly going to be a taking through a court process? So that, I guess
am
that's
not
my
sure,
question.
But I'm fairly certain it's a sale. But I'm unsure. I've not heard of anyone speaking of a taking, mostly just a purchasing of the parcels, but that's a good question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Dan and Jerome, you're both able to unmute yourself if you would like to speak and provide public comment.
Nope, thanks, just tuning in. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Jerome? Nope.
Comment over? The draft urban forester job description.
Okay. I would love y'all's feedback. I'm going to, instead of taking notes on a document live, I'm going to watch the recording and write down and make all of the edits that you suggest verbally. I imagine you all have enough comments that I don't have enough paper. So I welcome your feedback, suggestions, on this job description. You also have the option, you always have an alternative offered to you. If you do not want to talk about the urban forester job description, you don't have to, but I will note that this attachment B here is something that's important to understand, and that's an interesting context for this. So the grant funding that we were awarded, that hopefully the city council accepts this upcoming meeting on the 16th, we can apply the federal funding in the orange area only. When I initially applied for the grant, we were not restricted in such a way, but grants are really interesting these days, and rules and suggestions change. So the remaining 50% of the funding for the urban forester's position would be, hopefully, fingers crossed, city funded, and that would allow them to work in the blue areas. So look at this job description as if they're going to be able to work everywhere, but there will need to be special tracking for when they're working in areas of orange.
And is that the disadvantaged area?
Yes, that is the EPA IRA disadvantaged communities, which is a large federal map that determines that that part of our community is disadvantaged. There were many federal tools that I looked at to try to make it so that we could apply the funding to the largest area possible in our jurisdiction, but that was the largest area that I was able to get using the different federal tools that were accepted by the U.S. Forest Service.
And looking at the map, I think the yellow area includes the port,
Yes, the airport and the port.
which, how is that disadvantaged?
Yeah.
I had to accept whatever federal tools were accepted by the federal government, and I tried to make it so that we were maximizing the amount of space. A lot of the federal tools don't make a lot of sense to me, but this is.
Although I'm sure a lot of it
It's
has
hammered out.
to do with, like, areas of industry and things like that typically have lower income housing built around them. Guessing.
It's complete opposite of what our environmental health disparities map for the city states. So it's interesting, but also the funding.
So are you saying that no more than 50% of the time of the urban forester can be spent outside this area?
The way that the
50% or more can be spent inside?
and the way that we wrote it in the scope of work for the grant agreement, it's that 50%, no more than 50% that's funded by the River Network, the U.S. Forest Service, the time needs to be dedicated in that orange area or working on tree equity in general. That benefits everyone. So there's a little wiggle, but
I'm guessing that 20% or more of the yellow in Tumwater is the airport, of which the urban forester will probably spend no time.
Shouldn't.
So
well, we do have the right of way.
he won't spend a significant amount of time in there, which means he's gonna have to spend more of his time on the non-port yellow area.
We still have right of way, and the urban forester, he, she, they, whoever they are, will be able to work on right of way even in that area. The Meeker Davis Gary Oak that we're talking about is in that same area in city right of way. So we do have street trees in that area that we maintain.
But this is kind of our industrial and urban core is Capitol Way on I-5. And that's where our urban forester is gonna need to spend 50% of his time.
Or on tree equity in general.
I mean, they might develop a program that helps the orange area, but if it also helps the blue area simultaneously,
Then
then
we would need to attribute city funding for any sort of incentive for the blue area, which we will be requesting, so that it can be available citywide, but we'll have, record keeping to do, and reporting. This is not ideal, of course, but this is how we got 50% of the funding to get the position.
And so I'm long scale, or long scope or something like that. I'm assuming we're gonna say, this funding is for how many years?
3.
So after 3 years, the city's gonna say, boy, this is wonderful. We really need this person full-time. We're gonna not ask for the grant because we need them over a larger area. And, we're gonna increase the budget so we can fully fund the urban forester, and then it doesn't matter where he works, where that person works. But we have a 3-year window to use these funds to demonstrate that this is really valuable to the city.
And we do have, so the position is funded 50%, but the incentives are funded 100% to be dispersed in that orange area. So that's the trees, the watering bags, the mulch, the compost, the free tree health assessments for homes in that area that have trees that they're freaked out about, and they just need to hear if they're actually hazards or not, so that hopefully we get less trees cut down and just out of fear without information. And street tree trimming grants for people who can't afford to trim the trees in the right of way adjacent to their property, which is another thing that we heard when we were talking about the street tree plan. Okay, but it's the adjacent property owner's responsibility to maintain those trees. But if they're not and they can't afford to have the opportunity so that we can keep the sidewalks from bonking people's heads.
it sounds like a good pilot experimental area to try things out. And if what works, that can be replicated hopefully in the future elsewhere.
Yeah.
What doesn't work, well, we'll try something else.
Yep.
So I see it as a petri dish, the orange area, for trying stuff out.
And that is not exactly the same area that was in the American Forest tree canopy equity, but I will say that the orange is really well overlapping with the areas of urban heat island in the city, which is another component of the grant that we'll be deploying ambient air temperature sensors throughout the orange area to track if the work that we're doing helps lower the ambient air temperature. But that's almost identical to the areas of the urban heat island. So I apologize for the map, but those are the constraints that we have. But the position in general, I'd love to hear your feedback on the.
I thought I was in here. I could have swore I saw it, but I don't see it now.
On page 14,
It was just the pages just before that map.
Oh, okay.
page 14, it says,
Right there. Starts there.
Okay.
It's a long job description.
number 2, under essential functions, supervises the tree planting and maintenance. That's no longer going to be under the public works people are not going to do that. This person's going to supervise that.
As required. So we have streets and parks that all maintain trees. Streets maintain the city right-of-way trees that are on city-owned right-of-way that we planted those trees. And then parks do the parks, and so they will help with tree planting and maintenance as needed. Those departments will still be doing work, but they will have the expertise available to provide input on that and guidance.
Consultant, really.
They can essentially consult the urban forester to get some guidance.
Okay, number 7, maintains records.
Reports,
Okay,
maintain records, prepares and presents written oral reports.
so we've talked in the past about the challenge of maintaining our inventory. Is this person going to do that?
Yes, they would be the point person for working with those other staff that also deal with trees. All together, they would be working on keeping that inventory up to date.
Number 12, serve as the alternative staff liaison to the tree board. Does that mean that that person will join you?
If I go on vacation, we won't have to cancel a tree board meeting. That they can come and be my substitute,
And they will report to you, but their office is going to be at SPSCC.
which is where my office is.
It moved? When?
It's been over a month, maybe close to 2 months now. I don't recall exactly, but we're the Water Resources and Sustainability Office separate from the operations teams that work with water resources and sustainability, are now over at the SPSCC campus in Building 32, in the old Botany building.
15, visits nurseries and select trees for mass planting projects throughout the city. So will this person now be the focal point for what trees get planted where on the city public lands?
They'll be part of the conversation. And for the trees that get planted on city lands, I would hope that they would be involved. That's the intent.
We've wrestled with, who decides what gets planted on city property. And it sounds like there's several people involved. Will this person have the final vote?
We can discuss that further.
I mean, it sounds like
Interdepartmental, I'm not sure how
he
the
will-
hierarchy, and
This-
maybe I will even, Dan, I'm just gonna make it so you can speak if you wanna, if you wanna
person,
chime in on it.
may have more expertise on it than some of the people who are currently asked to make those choices.
Although we do have, Eldon on our streets team is a wizard with trees, and he has a lot of care and thought that he puts into it.
Yeah, I guess all I would add would be that, this is a work in progress. And, how this position integrates itself into other departmental affairs, so to speak, will be, basically to be determined as we bring the person on, as we identify the expertise, as we the expertise available to other departments. The intention, as you see before you, is what we've put out there. And this is still a work in progress. It hasn't been discussed with the leadership team. It hasn't been discussed with council or the mayor or anything along those lines. So, there's, everything is subject to change. And of course, we would want to make sure that the expertise is available to all of the departments and that its influence, of the subject matter expertise would be utilized fully. But again, all is to be determined. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Feedback.
Historically, you have individuals who've developed expertise or experience at making tree selection. They may not have academic training in doing that, and it may not be formally written into their job description. I think it's a positive thing to identify that person in the city job descriptions, that this is the person who will be deciding the species that will go in so that other people can consult with them over time. I think that will help maintain a more comprehensive view as to what trees are planted and consistent policy and all the environmental stuff. If you identify that role function rests in this position.
Sure, absolutely. And I think we have things that are adopted by code. We have things that are adopted by departments, as far as, we have street tree lists. We have, I think you've heard from our stormwater specialist around our development guide, what plants are appropriate for what situations. All those things are continuously under review. And, most recently, coming up for kind of review, and I think you guys are going to be taking a look at some of those things. That's where this person will have some influence, is under future updates for that kind of work. So that information would be, utilized. Absolutely.
Great.
And I'll just note that this is still in very draft form. 4 people total have reviewed this before it came to you all. So myself, person who actually does the tree permit review, Brad, and my supervisor, Dan. So early draft, looking for input. Not
Maybe
perfect yet.
A line item, but it seems like it'd be worthwhile to have a line item that talks about collaborating with other city departments. Because I might look at that and think, I'm gonna be a solo person, I'm gonna make all these decisions myself, and in reality, that's not what this is for. I think maybe calling that out, that collaboration is not only desired, but needed.
Well, this say in 20 provides professional horticultural
Right.
advice to citizens.
Okay, good. I guess I
departments, and
haven't memorized the whole thing, but.
I have an overall question. While we're on the essential job duties section, I'm curious how it's organized.
Board chart. You mean?
No,
The list,
you're 1 through 22.
Oh.
Yeah.
not in order of importance, in order of, I was copying examples from other jurisdictions, and I thought these ones were good.
I think my overall advice, or feedback on this section would be maybe try doing some like a bucketing exercise. Which 4 can fit into this bucket? And then you might start seeing some trends where you could just elevate something like collaborate with other departments as necessary and remove some duplicative ones.
Yeah, there may be some that are consultative.
Yeah.
And some where you want subject matter expertise. This person is the authority, you expect them to have the authority. This one, they're gonna coordinate. Training is one of the things that you've got here, that this person will do some training for a variety of staff in the city. So, interagency collaboration, it might be one bucket. Or interdepartment, I guess you would say. And the other would be the interagency, yeah. What is this person supposed to do outside in relation to other municipalities or other organizations?
It might be premature, but I've seen a lot of these where they give percentages, like 40% of your time is gonna be on this bucket, even though it's a huge guess right now, and it's gonna change 3 times, but again, if I was looking at this as a potential applicant, I would be a little chaotic about what am I really gonna do and how much time do I need to spend, other than fact, they want me to do all this.
Yeah, I understand also that.
What are the priorities?
22 essential duties.
I'm curious about administrative functions. How much, this record keeping, which I'm a big advocate of. But I don't want the person to spend 50% of their time entering data in the computer, so. And that might put up a red flag for potential applicants.
How would you all suggest I move forward with the potential percentages, considering the overarching 50% in this geographic area, 50% in another?
That's a good point. It's on the grant requirements. The bottom of page 15, I don't understand the very last sentence. I think there's a typo in the last 6 words.
Additional qualifying experience of completion of coursework at an accredited college or university in a job-related field may substitute for a year-for-year basis 1 year of the required experience.
You're just missing 4 before the last 1.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Like I said, not been seen by too many eyes yet.
Yeah.
Mike, you started to say something and then I spoke up.
So I was just curious whether, on the map, if is all the airport property within that orange area,
I am
or
not
just
sure.
part of it?
Well, are these white lines, is this the road?
Yeah,
So,
or actually, those are census blocks.
oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's closed. This was I-5, but maybe that's not the case.
Because one of the things that, over the last 25 or 30 years, we've been trying to get the airport, there's some of the last mature trees in this city are on that airport property. And 3 years ago, the FAA tried to get us to cut every tree that was over 150 feet tall. And we had to go out and measure every one of those sons of guns. And it turned out about 80% of them were over 150 feet. Well, that whole thing just fell by the wayside. But the thing is if the orange area is the area, even though there's no houses out there, or not very many, if the port ever gets to some of those large areas that they want to cut everything and build a, whatever that,
Coke manufacturing,
well,
just bottling.
is that one of them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
bottling.
but anyway, it's large areas, basically, is, the urban forester could have a lot to say about what the heck is left in the city of Tumwater on those mature areas. Because there's some pretty nice spots, but that whole thing is industrial zone. And basically all the cutting operations we've had on that airport in the last 30 years have gone with trying to leave areas that, hey, they could build over there and leave this strip and build over there. But anyway, if the ownership of that orange area is most of those areas, is it Armstrong Road on there? Or
There's No roads.
No roads? Okay. But the outer boundary, that black line, is that the city,
Yeah,
city
The
limit?
urban growth area is the
So-
dotted line.
yeah, the urban growth
Okay.
area is here, and then this is the,
The
City
city
limits.
limits are the black outline, and then the UGA is the dashed dotted. And just because this is called EPA disadvantaged communities doesn't mean that the urban forester isn't gonna work on commercial or industrial properties and reviews,
No, I'm
reviewing,
just-
yeah.
I'm just saying that some of those large areas, if they're gonna be basically destroyed and put a big building on the thing, he could be spending some time out there. That would include, that'd be included in the 50%, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Any of the space that, the land that is in orange, irregardless of what kind of zoning it is or who owns it. The urban forester would review development applications. If it's a resident, then they could apply for those incentive programs. There's different ways that they would interact with the land in the orange areas, depending on what the need was.
There are more orange areas down at the bottom? Oh, okay. I'll have to study that a little closer to find out where that is.
It's outside the urban growth.
Huh?
It's outside the urban growth area.
Well, the urban forester would continue working within the UGA. so
What do we
the-
call that orange
within-
in the lower left, they would be
Yeah.
working in there.
They
Let's
wouldn't
go
be
down
on
to
that.
93rd then.
Right. I assume this,
Now, that's
The
the
city
whole
limits
thing with a lot of the stuff that's going on is, you know, within the urban growth area, you know, there's areas that, the 40 acres with nothing on it except Scotch Room. And there's maybe 10 acres that's got one house on it, and the old guy dies, then it's gonna be developed. And all those trees on that piece are gonna be gone,
right,
even with the present code.
Exactly, and no variance. And no variances.
I fully realize that you all haven't seen the draft codes that we were working on. But I've gone through 2 or 3 reviews on each one of them so far, and I have a feeling that most of you will be quite pleased with where they are and where they're going, in terms of the retention and it's very needed for us to have an urban forester to do reviews on that robust of a code, because it is about the tree and vegetation protection ordinance, like 50 pages.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be able to see some of that stuff before that person gets hired.
I hope so too. I'm itching to get back to it as well. Continue.
You have your, required qualifications and your preferred qualifications. In preferred qualification 2, you list preferred credentials, but then close out that number by saying they must maintain this credential. So that's a little confusing.
They have to get it within a certain time of when they are, I think I mentioned that. I realize how it would be good to put that in the preferred qualifications, because up here it says we'd like that, but you need to get it within 6 months of hire. For ISA Arbor certification,
So is it a minimum qualification or a preferred qualification?
it's a preferred They don't need it to be hired, but they need to get it within 6 months of being hired and then maintain the credential throughout their employment. I'll figure out a way to make that clearer.
Yeah, I might want to wordsmith that.
you don't have to have it to apply,
Right.
but they
It
have,
seems like they would need to have something though, I think.
I am all on board for having a minimum credential requirement, but I defer to you all who have more experience with this. If you think it would be an obstacle to require it, not, no.
I think requiring it upfront is a prudent way to go. ISA certification, it's just I don't know what levels you want to require. I can see where you can have the base level, and then they can layer on other ones later.
Or do you have your arborist credential, right?
Yeah.
You do. And would you feel that, like, when you had it and you were out of school not so long, that would have been, I guess you would have had it, so it wouldn't have been an obstacle for you, but for others in your field?
No, I mean, so, just so I'm understanding qualifications correctly. And I love my job, so I'm not applying for this one. They don't have to have it to apply, correct?
As it's written now.
Okay.
But if you all would like to suggest that they have it as a required qualification, there's a push and pull with the credentials now, that if people haven't had the privilege to have formal education,
Yep.
but they might have gone through this in the workplace, that having an ability for that to not necessarily be required right off and be able to, balance work, experience, that's something to consider. But if you don't feel that it's an obstacle for them to have work experience and also that in place of necessarily an education, a formal education in that, how to move forward with what you all think the minimum qualification should be.
How long does it take to get the ISA certification?
You have to have 5 years minimum experience before you can take the test.
And then you gotta pass the test.
That's really broad. It doesn't have to necessarily even be 5 years of
Yeah.
experience.
Right, yeah. I think if, from like start to
They're
finish.
paying almost $90,000, so it's.
Yeah.
So you can do the work without
Yeah,
without
that
the
makes sense.
certification?
That's not what it says. It says you
I
need to
know.
be ISA certified as a minimum.
No, I mean, to say you've been doing the work, will somebody hire you to do the work if you don't have the certification already?
Yeah.
So how
Oh,
can you
yeah.
get the work? Is it, is it a catch-22 thing?
No, so like,
Okay.
on a typical tree crew, like, the
Yeah.
boss would be certified. And then you work under them for a number of years.
Okay.
So you get your 5 and you take your test.
Like City of Olympia and State of Washington requires a certified arborist to be on staff in order to work in those jurisdictions.
Thank you.
So you all are leaning towards requiring the credential as a minimum qualification,
The base certification, not necessarily the
Yeah.
tree risk assessment,
just the ISA arborist certification.
and they can layer other things on.
Although technically they couldn't, like, if they didn't have their track certification, they wouldn't be able to say if a tree was.
Right, you're asking them to
tree
do
risk.
some of the work that
Yeah.
requires certification.
You can use the same list that you used for the tree assessment of that oak.
Yeah.
Well, that's the highest of the high.
I know. But I mean, if you send the qualifications out to that group, you'd probably get some,
Oh, some people apply for this.
yeah,
Oh.
I would think,
So that would be 17 you couldn't do without the ISA?
that way.
Is that the one that they wouldn't be able to complete?
Conducting field surveys to
Now,
inspect
this is,
trees.
we're talking about tree risk assessment.
Yeah, I mean,
Hazard
they
assessment.
could like say, yeah, this is poor or whatever the good. They just couldn't like they couldn't say it's gonna fall down or.
Is there one that says risk?
No, I was just saying, I don't think it does.
But you hire Kevin to do tree risk assessments, right, as your consultant?
Yes,
So
and
it seems like you want this person to have the same credential, be able to do that same work.
both yes and no. So my understanding from DNR is that it's a good practice, for trees that are on our property that might be controversial for some reason, to have an outside third party do that, but for, general trees that wouldn't necessarily be a large concern, that would be something that would be appropriate for an urban forester on staff to do, but that there would be opportunities and times where it would be most appropriate for us to go with a third
I
party.
wouldn't eliminate that option.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I was just thinking about this tree assessment, like what is that? For 8?
It can be more specific, tree health assessment instead of risk assessment.
Yeah,
Different, yeah,
Air
they're two very
quality.
different
To
things.
do a risk assessment, you're supposed to be risk
Track.
certified.
Yeah.
right.
I can't even do that.
You won't be applying the
No,
tree.
No, I'm not through that.
Don't want that job.
No, I don't want that.
Better have anonymous in your
That
title.
Are there physical requirements for the job, since she knows?
Yeah, under working conditions.
Oh.
So work in an office with significant portion of time spent doing duties out of doors, completing site investigations, or
Voting.
maybe.
They get their own vehicle.
We didn't put in for one for them. We have shared vehicles in my department that they would have at their disposal.
I might consider rewording the frequent travel sentence,
Where's that one?
under working conditions.
Like local.
Frequent travel and attendance meeting for conferences. Yeah,
And maybe, what's typical for like a state job would be an estimation of percent travel away from your, like, work station.
Duty station.
You say periodic, as
Yeah.
needed.
mostly
Well-
the travel would be for like training or
Continuing
conferences,
education.
yeah.
Not like they're going out and consulting all over the state.
You have to stay within the orange area.
At least within the dotted line.
Yeah,
Get approval.
I'm a little surprised at working conditions, regular attendance of night meeting once a month. Is that not city council,
It could be city council, it could be work
Planning
session,
commission.
planning commission.
I would think it might well be more than once a month.
Yeah, I mean, I had 2 this week, 1 last week, night meetings are common. I can reword that to be as needed.
Are they called night meetings? That's a little.
No, that's just how, they're in the evening, it's after hours, after the normal working hours. Yes, night meetings, that's a strange term.
Yeah.
I wrote that, thank you.
Mhm.
This is why other people look at this, thank you.
This might be too in the weeds, but, is there an expectation for Arbor Day celebration planning? I mean, that's not part of the tree board, but, or expanding, I know we've had dreams of expanding our Arbor Day celebration and education beyond our 1 yearly event, like in schools or in the community. I've just mentioned that several times. I don't know if that's folded in other places,
There was something about like
outreach, education,
Tree
outreach.
USA is in there, but,
coordinate volunteer tree
Yes, we are.
planting, volunteer coordinator.
I would, if it's not in there, more specific language about outreach and Arbor Day outreach and community forestry celebration and education.
conducts education outreach on urban forestry topics.
There you go.
Yeah. I thought there was something in there.
Organizing that list will help.
Yes.
Yes, the
Thank
buckets,
you.
like you said.
Teamwork.
You can have a bucket called outreach and education, example.
And we'll have to navigate that with the other person in my department who does outreach and education as their primary job duty and delineating who does.
Specifically for, as called in the urban forestry management plan. I think there's a whole section in there on that topic.
One of the,
Does anyone maintain the, City Tree USA accommodation now?
me, I do.
We get it every year, thanks to Alyssa.
And Brad before me. It's reporting on the number of, like the tree maintenance and the per capita investment. It's not a huge list, but it is something to make sure that we get inside the deadline every year.
Do you report to the Arbor, does Arbor Day Foundation know that you do that? Because when I reached out to the Arbor Day Foundation, they gave me a guy at DNR.
It's a very large organization.
Oh, okay.
There are specific people, Tree City, there's a state person from DNR that,
Yes, that's what they gave me.
yes, so that's, I also coordinate with them.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Arbor Day Foundation and the Tree City USA and Evergreen Communities lead from DNR for Washington State, and we all work on it together.
Oh, okay.
Is this too much for one, no, go.
Nope.
I was gonna ask, is this too much for one person?
No.
Probably.
Yeah, most job descriptions are.
Too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you interview them. Or it breaks down to that.
Well, and some of this is coming off your plate, right?
Not a whole lot, but some, yes. We'll have an expert doing the things that experts need to do.
We're getting kind of late. Do we want to like move on?
It's done. You're the chair.
I think when it's all written down, it's overwhelming, right?
I know,
Getting
it's
a job,
just-
it's not
you're
really
supposed
as scary.
Overwhelmed.
Also, since we're not necessarily
Yeah.
going for a consensus or a vote on any of this, like, you all can still email me additional comments, or changes that you would like to see, since we're moving on. There's time.
Might be useful if you have time to interview a local urban forester to see how this flushes out with their real world. I mean, they might have different objectives and different goals than Tumwater, but it could still be enlightening.
And this is an idea that I just had, so it might not be good. Would you be interested, if and when this position does get hired and onboarded, or before they're onboarded, for a tree board member to be on the interviewing panel?
Oh,
certainly.
Okay. And then at that time, we'll discuss who wants to do that, or if it's,
You like the new girl.
How would you go about saving the micro?
Yeah. Situation question.
There you go. We'll try that.
So I'll try to be quick on this one. This was an item that Brent had suggested.
I want to maybe suggest we table it, because I don't think we can do justice to it in 7 minutes, but that's my opinion. Or maybe you can introduce it tonight. I thought it would be, I'd like more of a work session, and particularly if we get somebody that actually does this for the city.
I'll see if I can get Alex.
That's a suggestion, but maybe you can introduce what you had in mind.
I just had 3 case studies of how our existing Tumwater Municipal Code 16.08, the Tree and Vegetation Protection Ordinance, is applied. There are 2 examples of just the land clearing permit for development. Then there's 1 example of one that's moved a little further along and also has a landscaping plan associated with it.
I'd like to see that too, like a work session, if we have that actual paperwork with it.
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
make the point, like,
we worked on this project.
I mean, I know you have it in your packet, but actual,
We
we
have
can
a,
point
Printed
it
in the
out.
right size. And,
Yeah,
yeah.
more of a hands-on work session.
So if you would like to table this conversation to a future meeting, I think I would just need a motion and
okay,
What impact does our discuss, I mean, we don't have to give input on any of these because the decision's gonna be made next week, and if we wait a month to talk about this, it's gonna be
these
too late.
decisions have already been
Already
made.
been
The
made.
tree board doesn't have a role in our code. This is, I know, I'm sorry that I have to say that. I just want to make it clear. These have already gone through.
yeah, the last one's like the one that's being built right next to Toyota.
Brent had suggested this to be something that we look at so that it's, how these are applied, it's fresh in your mind for when we restart the conversation on how to change the code.
Is there still wiggle room to do that if we don't do it tonight?
Yes, yeah. The timing for when we start the code, keeps getting a little delayed because we're on, now we finally have a senior planner who's gonna start, and that's gonna be part of their work. The comprehensive plan is taking up a lot of time for community development, so they're waiting until that senior planner is onboarded and comfortable, and they will kind of lead that work. So it was supposed to be August, it's not August anymore, maybe now it's October. So I'll try to keep you updated on that as far as I'm hearing, but it's all of the things that Lisa was talking about balancing and all the state requirements. There's a long list of state requirements that we're having to incorporate into our comprehensive plan. It's a big list. So they're quite busy, and the public is always welcome to be engaged in that process, welcomed and encouraged.
I move that we table this discussion to is there a meeting you would suggest, a month,
It could be the August 12th meeting.
the August 12th meeting,
Second,
with inviting someone from the planning review department
Yes.
and larger maps.
Yes.
That's a very specific motion.
I'll second all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Question really quick though, with Hannah's planned departure, would it make sense to table it further so that we can maybe do it with the replacement board member?
Are there people in the queue that want to be on it?
Yeah, do we know the cadence for replacement?
No. So, when you all came, when Hannah and Brody came on, that was kind of the fastest replacement that I think we've had. I think, but given the Gary Oak situation, I have a feeling people will be eager to join the tree board. Interest in trees is high right now. So it might not sit stagnant for very long.
Do we have a queue? There are no current applicants waiting
But
to
you probably haven't advertised either.
No, she just sent her email. Yeah, it was just a
Wow.
sudden decision.
Come on.
So is it likely we could have that role filled by the September meeting.
It is possible. I don't know if it's likely.
That still gives us enough time to learn about all this before we do the code review.
Yes, because if we do start in October, with the code, which is the date that I've been given
Okay.
kind of right now, we just want to get it, this conversation done before, October, so that it's fresh in your mind how the code is deployed and how it's used, and maybe some things that you can identify that you don't like about how projects have moved forward.
I also want to hear about the exemptions and variances from this person, hear everybody. Well, that's a friendly amendment, I accept it.
Yes.
It's September.
So, second.
Okay, so, move to make a motion to table the discussion on the case study till September meeting.
Maybe we should say until Hannah's position is filled.
That makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to have it done by October, I heard.
We have to have the codes done.
No,
right?
it's
No, no,
it's
no.
learning,
We
it's
want to
learning.
have gone through this
Okay,
exercise
okay,
before we restart the code development process.
Another option is do the review, the tabletop next month. It's gonna be recorded. The new person can come on board.
Listen to the recording.
Yeah. I mean, we're only in the beginning of July, maybe, like I said, maybe you'll recruit somebody by then.
Up to you all.
Well, this relates to the next item. When is the field trip? Is it next month?
That's something that, I was gonna encourage us to talk about, because if it's going to move to September, then maybe we normally do the field trip in September, so maybe the field trip is in August. So kind of figuring out the schedule of the next couple months here.
So if we moved this discussion to next month we could always decide to move it again.
That's true, yes,
That's just good governance.
right. We can always move it down month by month.
That really makes the scheduling hard.
We will miss you regardless, so I speak for everyone. So was that a motion to tentatively?
Um,
On next month, next month's agenda?
Yes, let's see, we have a motion. Do you still agree with that?
I do.
We'll just move it
Whatever
to
you
July,
say.
okay. Make a motion to move the case study, protection trees and vegetation implementation, the July meeting,
August.
or August meeting, right, this is July.
Second.
August meeting, seconded by Brody. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion. So, we'll move that to, okay,
Then we just have to guard the agenda so that we have more than 7 minutes
right,
to work on it.
okay, and then the summer field trip. Do we just want to discuss that in the next meeting as well?
Unless the next meeting is, well, I guess if this is on the next one, then September is likely the field trip.
Okay,
If you would like me to start gathering materials, when we did I need to know where, where you would like to go. So if there is any background material that you want me to present you with, like when we did the tour to the kind of problem sites, 2 years ago, there were a lot of development plans that we had to dig up and bring out. So if there's something that's gonna take a little while for me to get from other staff, I'd like to know ahead of time.
So
But
where are these 3 case studies in the process? Have the trees been cut down yet, or they're just,
No.
so maybe we could go see in the real world, these case studies that we're gonna learn?
well, one of them, all the trees have been cut down,
Oh, okay.
the last one.
Let's do that.
Well, not-
Or there was only like
Not Yorkshire.
15 trees on that site to begin with.
Oh, that's the Home Depot one?
Yeah, it's the one right behind Home Depot.
I just wonder if there's any kind of advantage to piggybacking
Yeah, that.
at least part of the field
Good
trip
idea.
of what we're gonna study on paper.
I
Not
would need
necessarily
to-
all of it, but maybe one site.
if we do decide to go to those sites, I would just need to know which one, and then I would need to ask the property owner if we would be permitted on the property and go through our risk management to see about us going on to entering.
I don't like overhead lines falling on me, so I can sue the city in that one site.
Want to give me some suggestions, I can run them down and figure out if any are, the most possible.
Have we looked at the park site for the new,
O&M facility.
yeah,
I like
That was a suggestion that Brent made
yeah,
at some point.
that would be
That's our property, so I don't have to.
something, right, exactly. Well, and even the property next to it that they're developing, would be,
Is that the trail's end?
Yeah.
maybe there's a,
The oak stain.
Yeah.
one that's somewhat finished.
Grading plan.
Maybe a development that's been completed, all done. Set empty, one of those big warehouse buildings. I don't know. It would be my only, anybody else have anything you'd wanna look at?
The water guy who talked to us 2 months ago,
Stafford Park.
Oh, yeah.
and what's his, he wanted to show us some stuff later. Is he ready?
Yes, I mentioned it to him at a meeting today, and he was excited at the prospect of showing the tree board around. A very easy field trip, which might not be the one that you want to do, but this is up to you, of course.
So the actual site they're gonna develop, they're gonna plant.
Yeah, so we could go to the Sap Road Park, which is a restoration, an active restoration site, and potentially also the Trails End property for the future O&M in the park. And that would be, I wouldn't need a whole lot of time to put that one together. If we want to go on any private property, I would just need to run that up quite a few chains.
Well, let's
Which
do
is
the
possible.
public, I'd be all right with that.
Their consensus?
All right. September Road. That's the treatment center behind Fish Park.
No,
Oh, I know.
it's got a sewer lift station.
Yeah.
Many people don't know that it's a park, developed as a park.
I remember
but yes,
that
It's
now.
city property and we're working
Okay.
on restoring.
All right. That road and the Trails End.
The city's doing the shoots, right, by the valley? That city? They're restoring, they move the road by Tumwater Valley?
Behind the craft district.
Yeah.
Well, eventually they're gonna take that road out.
Right. That's the city too, right? Restoring
Yeah.
it?
Dan, do you know about that?
Sorry,
I
trying
know
to
that
find,
we're working,
I'm doing a couple things at once here. Are you talking about the road behind Tumwater Valley, or the road, the realignment of Tumwater Valley Drive?
Yes.
That is essentially, it's a private development project for the craft brewing distilling district. It realigns traffic so that some additional development can be done and makes traffic flow easier for the city.
and are we working on any, riparian restoration in that area?
You have to check with transportation engineering on what the development agreement is. It's not our project.
Thank you, Dan.
They've installed retention ponds already.
Okay, next meeting, 8/12/2024. Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Moved.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. I know. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, you'll be here next week.